Growing up in the message, there was one prophecy that I felt was the easiest to prove. The prophet claimed that cars would be shaped more and more like an egg. When I compared the cars today with the photos of cars in the 1930s, they were much different, and this was the first prophecy that I began to research. I found that in the 1930s, thoughts of egg-shaped cars were nothing unusual. In fact, you could easily read about the new and upcoming designs in newspapers around the world. By 1930, American and European engineers were preparing for a radical change in the automotive industry. New body shapes were being tested in wind tunnels for aerodynamics. And as a result of those tests, it was predicted by many that the future of automobiles was egg-shaped. Everyone from analysts to journalists were predicting how the change would come. The Associated Press picked up the story in 1930, and papers from coast to coast described egg-shaped cars. If this was prophesied in 1934 or even in 1933, wouldn't people have rejected it as an informed prediction? I came across an article describing a prophetic book written by designer Norman Bell Geddes. Horizons, written in 1932, described how the world would change as technology increased. Newspapers, magazines, and casual readers were fascinated with his automotive design. According to Bell Geddes, the egg-shaped aerodynamics were the way of the future, also for the egg-shaped bus and other vehicles. Bell Geddes' designs were so incredible that they were used in the 1933 World's Fair. I remembered the prophet talking about visiting the World's Fair in Chicago, and I was suddenly curious to know more about the prophet's glimpse into the future designed by Bell Geddes. The prophet said that he went to hear Paul Rader preach at the World's Fair in 1933. I just learned that Paul Rader was the brother of Ralph Rader from Jeffersonville, and that a large part of the prophet's congregation came from Ralph Rader's church. It seemed odd to me that he would go to visit Paul Rader, and even more odd that he could afford to go. The prophet often said that he couldn't scrape 2 pennies together during his early years as a minister. I found an article describing Paul Rader's involvement with the World's Fair. 40 centuries of religion was to be depicted in a pageant on Soldier Field on July 3, 1933. The romance of a people was the Jewish contribution to the fair. The first episode of the pageant included a sacrifice to a 27-foot-tall image of the god Moloch. When I heard the prophet talk about hearing Paul Rader preach at the World's Fair, I never really thought about it being at a pageant about Jewish history. In fact, I never really thought about what it would have been like at the World's Fair. The 1933 A Century of Progress Exposition World's Fair was massive. Entire villages were created to represent histories, nationalities, technologies, and significant world events. Visitors could walk the streets of Paris or attend a carnival. They could even visit a casino or hang out in the Hollywood Club, or visit the Hall of Religion where they could learn more about different denominations. Chrysler, Ford, Chevrolet, and other motor companies had exhibits to display prototypes of the automotive future. And with a new shift towards aerodynamics, the prophet would have seen the prophecy before the prediction was made. One of the vehicles on display was made almost entirely of glass. Only 9 working parts were necessary in the prototype. The most extreme egg-shaped design was the Dynamaxion. It had 3 wheels, a rudder steering mechanism, and was shaped entirely like an egg. I began to wonder if anyone went to the Chicago World's Fair with the prophet. What did they say when he returned, claiming to prophesy about egg-shaped cars? I certainly never knew that the prophet would have seen the design before the prophecy. Most of all, I wondered what Roy E. Davis thought about the prophecy. Being well informed, he would have known the story behind the prophecy. Did he see the prophet as a threat to his operation, or as an asset?